"You will unite with us," said the three giant alien princesses on the station I bought. Marcus had always dreamed of exploring the stars, but he never imagined his journey would begin with a purchase. The space station he had bought was huge, more than he had ever expected. Located on the outer edges of the galaxy, it was ancient, forgotten by most, and long in need of repairs. However, it had a charm to it. He saw potential where others might have seen only rust and decay. To Marcus, it wasn't just a purchase. It was an opportunity, a blank canvas where he could create something great. The deal had been a simple one. He had stumbled upon an old auction listing, nothing too special, just another piece of forgotten history up for grabs. Yet when the paperwork was signed and the station's keys were handed over, Marcus realized he had done something much bigger than he'd ever planned. The station wasn't just a trading post or research hub. It was a relic of a long-lost civilization. He had bought something important, something with a story far beyond what he had anticipated. It was his first time aboard the station after the transaction. The metal corridors stretched endlessly, and the high ceilings seemed to whisper secrets of a time long past. The place was quiet, almost too quiet, except for the hum of ancient systems that still somehow worked. The old control room was still operational, its glowing panels flickering weakly, offering a glimpse of the station's once grand purpose. Marcus had been walking through the hallways when he first saw them, the three figures standing in front of a large, circular window that overlooked the dark expanse of space. The first thing he noticed was their size. They were enormous, much taller than any human he had ever seen, towering over the surroundings like statues of mythic beings. Their skin shimmered with a silvery hue, reflecting the dim lights of the station, and their eyes glowed softly, like distant stars. They turned as he approached. The three giant women stood with an air of authority, each radiating power, grace, and a strange presence that sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. They were humanoid, but their proportions were different from any human he had ever encountered. Their features were sharp, regal, and beautiful in an otherworldly way. Each wore elaborate armor adorned with symbols and designs that Marcus couldn't understand. They looked ancient, like beings who had ruled over entire galaxies, yet they also seemed like they had been waiting for something, or someone, for a very long time. The tallest of them spoke first, her voice deep and resonant. "You have bought our station," she said, her words echoing in the empty halls. Her gaze was intense, like she could see right through Marcus. "It was not a simple purchase. This place is more than just metal and stone. It is the heart of our empire, and now it belongs to you." Marcus froze, unsure of how to respond. I didn't know what I was buying," he stammered. "I just thought it was an old station. Some rust, some repairs, you know." The second princess, slightly shorter but with an equally commanding presence, stepped forward. "You did not know, but now you do. This station holds the key to our empire's return, and you human will play a part in it." Marcus blinked, trying to process what they were saying. "Return? What do you mean? I don't understand. I'm just here to fix this place up." The tallest princess tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You will understand soon enough. The station is more than a home, it is a symbol of power, of unity, and of rebirth. We are the last of our kind, and we have waited long for someone to awaken the old systems. You are that person." Marcus felt a chill creep up his spine. "Wait, you want me to help you rebuild your empire?" he asked, incredulous. The third princess, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Her voice was softer, but just as firm. "We are not asking for help. We are inviting you to join us. Together, we will bring back the glory of our people. You will not only lead this station, but guide us as we restore our place in the galaxy." "Lead?" Marcus repeated, his mind racing. "I'm just a guy who bought an abandoned space station. Why me? Why would you want me to lead anything?" The princesses exchanged glances, and the tallest one spoke again, her tone more serious. "You are human, and humanity is known for its resilience, creativity, and ability to rise against the odds. You are exactly what we need. You will unite with us, as the bond between our species is stronger than you think. This station is only the beginning. You, Marcus, will have the power to change everything." Marcus took a step back, overwhelmed. "I don't know if I'm ready for this. I came here to fix some broken equipment, not to rule an empire." The second princess smiled slightly, her expression softening for the first time. "You do not need to be ready, you only need to accept. Accept the power of this place, accept our guidance, and accept your role in something far greater than yourself." He stood in silence, staring at the towering figures before him. They seemed so sure, so certain of their mission. And yet something about them unsettled him. They weren't just alien beings, they were ancient rulers with a history and power far beyond anything he had ever imagined. "I don't know if I can do this," Marcus finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I'll help however I can. I can't turn my back on this." The tallest princess nodded slowly, a flicker of approval in her eyes. "That is all we ask. The galaxy will not wait for us to decide. We must act, and you are the key." Marcus felt the weight of their words settle on his shoulders. There was no going back now. He had become part of something much bigger than he ever expected. And whether he was ready or not, his life would never be the same. The princesses turned and began walking down the hall, their long strides purposeful and commanding. Marcus followed them, his thoughts a whirl of confusion and anticipation. What had he just gotten himself into? Was he truly the one who could help them rebuild their empire? Or was he simply a pawn in a game far beyond his understanding? Marcus walked down the long corridors of the station, trying to process everything that had just happened. The princesses had given him a lot to think about, and the weight of their words pressed heavily on his mind. He had come to the station with simple intentions, fixing up a neglected piece of space history. But now he was entangled in something far greater. The tall princess who had first spoken to him led the way, her strides confident and assured. The other two followed, their presence commanding yet strangely calming. They seemed so sure of themselves, their voices filled with authority, yet there was something vulnerable about them too, something that hinted at the years of waiting, the longing to restore their empire. Marcus had to admit that their offer was tempting. The thought of leading alongside such powerful beings, of reshaping the galaxy, was beyond anything he had ever imagined. Yet a part of him hesitated. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't prepared for this. All he had ever known was hard work and hustle, not galactic diplomacy or empire building. But he had already agreed to help them. The choice was made, and there was no turning back. The princesses stopped in front of a massive control panel, its surfaces covered in strange symbols and lights. It was ancient technology, yet somehow still functional. The tallest princess placed her hand on a glowing surface, and the station seemed to come alive. The lights above flickered on, and the hum of the station systems grew stronger. "This is the heart of our empire," she said, her voice echoing in the quiet. "The station is not just a place of rest or trade, it is the core of our power. It is a symbol of what we once were and what we can become again." Marcus studied the control panel, marveling at the technology. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before. His mind raced, trying to understand how this forgotten station could hold such power. He glanced back at the princesses, who were now observing him with intense eyes. "You will help us unlock its potential," the second princess said softly. "You, a human, can bridge the gap between the old and the new. Our civilization fell because we were too divided. We have spent centuries in hiding, waiting for someone who could help us restore what was lost." Marcus frowned. "I still don't understand. What exactly do you want from me? You keep saying I'm the key, but what does that mean?" The third princess, who had remained quiet until now, spoke. "You are the key because you are a symbol of unity. Our empire was built on alliances, alliances that extended across species, across planets. Over time, we lost sight of those connections. You, Marcus, are the link we need. Your kind, humans, have proven to be adaptable, resourceful, and capable of bringing together disparate groups. That is why we need you." "But I'm just one guy," Marcus protested, feeling the weight of their expectations growing heavier with each passing second. "I can't rebuild an empire on my own." "You will not be alone," the tallest princess reassured him. "We will guide you. We have knowledge, power, and resources. What we need is your perspective, your ability to unite the different races of the galaxy. We cannot do it alone." Marcus ran his hand through his hair, feeling overwhelmed. The galaxy? Uniting races? What had he gotten himself into? He wasn't a politician or a diplomat. He was just a man who had taken a chance on a rusty old space station. "Where do I start?" he asked, his voice uncertain. The princesses exchanged a look, and the tallest one smiled, though it was a small, almost wistful smile. "We start by gathering allies," she said. "The station systems have been dormant for too long, but it still holds the keys to our network of allies. We need to reach out to them, one by one, and remind them of who we were and who we can be." Marcus took a deep breath. It wasn't going to be easy. Reaching out to alien species wasn't something that could be done with a few clicks on a control panel. It was going to require careful planning, diplomacy, and a whole lot of patience. The second princess stepped forward and activated a holographic map in the center of the room. The map expanded, showing several star systems, some of which Marcus recognized from his brief time in space trading, while others were completely unfamiliar. Each system was marked with different symbols, some glowing brightly, others dimmer, indicating the strength of their allegiance to the princess's empire. "This is our galaxy," the second princess said. "It's fractured. Some systems are still loyal to our cause, but others have turned away. We need to reach out to them, remind them of the power we once held, and offer them the opportunity to join us." Marcus studied the map closely. The galaxy was vast, and the task ahead seemed impossible. How could one human, with no political experience, convince entire star systems to rejoin an empire that had been forgotten for centuries? "We'll need to send messages, set up meetings, build relationships." "It won't happen overnight," Marcus said, more to himself than to the princesses. "Exactly," the tallest princess replied. "It will take time, but we are patient, and so must you be. The galaxy will not be won in a single day. It will be built slowly, piece by piece." Marcus looked at the princesses, each one waiting for him to take the first step. He could feel the weight of their expectations pressing on him. But there was something else, too, a flicker of hope. They truly believed in this mission, and they believed in him. If he was going to do this, if he was going to help them rebuild their empire, he had to believe in it too. "All right," Marcus said, his voice steadying. "Let's start with the nearest systems. We'll send out messages, see who's still willing to listen. We'll build from there." The princesses nodded in agreement. "We knew we could count on you," the third princess said, a hint of warmth in her tone. With that, Marcus felt a sense of resolve wash over him. This wasn't the adventure he had planned, but it was the one he had found. And somehow, he knew that he couldn't turn back now. His journey had only just begun. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind. Marcus had barely had time to catch his breath before the princesses began their plans for gathering allies. Each day was filled with meetings, research, and endless discussions about how to approach the different star systems. The station, once silent and forgotten, now buzzed with activity as the princesses worked to reactivate its systems. Marcus was still coming to terms with the enormity of what he had agreed to, but each day he felt himself getting more invested. The princesses had given him a small but powerful role, to act as their liaison to the galaxy. They were ancient beings, rulers of an empire long lost, and they knew that the power of their words alone wouldn't be enough to unite the galaxy. They needed someone who understood the modern world, someone who could speak to the beings across the stars in a way they could understand. It was a heavy responsibility, but Marcus had accepted it. There was no turning back now. He had already made a commitment, and he wasn't about to let the princesses down. But even as he threw himself into the work, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was far out of his depth. He wasn't a diplomat, and he had never thought of himself as a leader. Yet with each passing day, he grew more confident, more determined. He had no choice but to rise to the challenge. One evening, as Marcus sat in the station's command room, going over communication protocols, the second princess entered. She had always been the most reserved of the three, but there was a quiet strength about her that Marcus admired. She stood by the window, staring out into the dark expanse of space, her silhouette illuminated by the stars. "Marcus," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight of both authority and kindness. "How are you feeling about everything?" He sighed, rubbing his eyes. "It's a lot to take in," he admitted. "I keep thinking about what you said about uniting the galaxy. It seems impossible. There are so many different species, so many different beliefs and cultures. How do we even begin to bring them all together?" The second princess turned to face him, her expression serious but compassionate. "It will not be easy. The galaxy is fractured. There are those who will resist, those who fear change. But there are also those who will join us, those who believe in the possibility of a better future. You will find them, and once you do, the others will follow." "But what about the ones who won't listen?" Marcus asked. "What if we can't convince them?" "Not everyone will join us. Some will always resist, no matter what we offer," she replied. "But we cannot focus on the ones who refuse to see the light. We must build with those who are willing. And if we do it right, the rest will see the strength of our alliance and want to be a part of it." Her words echoed in his mind long after she left. It was clear that the princesses had lived through wars, betrayals, and countless challenges. They had seen the worst of what the galaxy had to offer and still held onto the hope of rebuilding their empire. But Marcus wasn't so sure. How could they hope to bring peace to such a broken galaxy? The next few days were filled with messages and negotiations. Marcus and the princesses sent out invitations to various systems, hoping to gauge their interest in joining the alliance. Some responded quickly, eager to re-establish old ties. Others were more reluctant, hesitant to trust the princesses after so many years of silence. Marcus had to learn the delicate art of persuasion, carefully crafting messages that balanced the princesses' power with promises of cooperation. As he worked, Marcus began to understand something important. It wasn't just the princesses' power that would bring the galaxy together. It was their vision. The princesses didn't want to rule with an iron fist. They wanted to create something better, a galaxy where different species could coexist, where the past mistakes of their empire could be learned from. It wasn't about domination, it was about unity. It was on the 5th day of their efforts that they received their first real breakthrough. A system from the Outer Rim responded to their invitation, agreeing to meet. The system, called HFY, had been neutral for centuries, avoiding involvement in galactic politics. For them to even consider joining the alliance was a major step forward. Marcus was tasked with leading the delegation to HFY. He couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement as the station prepared for the journey. This was it. This was the first real chance to prove that the princesses' vision could work. If they could win HFY over, it would show that their idea was possible, that they could truly unite the galaxy. The journey to HFY was long, and the travel was slow. The station's systems weren't fully operational yet, and it took longer than Marcus would have liked to reach their destination. But during the journey, Marcus had time to reflect. He thought about what the princesses had said, about how important it was to find the right allies, how they needed to start with the ones who believed in their cause. And he realized something important. He wasn't just a messenger anymore. He was part of something bigger. He was part of a movement that could change everything. When they finally arrived at HFY, Marcus felt a mixture of nerves and anticipation. He had never been part of a diplomatic mission before, and the weight of the moment wasn't lost on him. This wasn't just a simple meeting. This was the beginning of something monumental. The HFY delegation greeted them with cautious optimism. The system's leaders had heard of the princesses before, but many were still unsure about whether they could trust them after all these years. It was Marcus's job to convince them that their intentions were genuine, that their vision for the galaxy was one worth supporting. The first meeting was tense. The HFY leaders were wary of the princesses' power and hesitant to commit. They asked hard questions, demanding to know what the princesses truly wanted and whether they could deliver on their promises. Marcus did his best to answer, speaking from his heart, knowing that this was more than just about politics. It was about hope. And in the end, it worked. After hours of discussion, the HFY leaders agreed to join the alliance. It wasn't a full commitment yet, but it was a start. They agreed to a trial partnership, offering support in exchange for resources and trade. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. Marcus couldn't believe it. They had done it. They had taken the first step toward rebuilding the princesses' empire, toward uniting the galaxy. The road ahead was still uncertain, and there would be more challenges to face, but for the first time, Marcus felt like they were on the right path. As the meeting concluded and the HFY leaders left the room, the second princess approached him, her expression proud. "You did well, Marcus," she said. "This is only the beginning, but it is an important one." Marcus smiled, a sense of relief flooding over him. "We did it," he said. "It's only the first step, but it feels like a huge one." She nodded. "It is, and now we must keep moving forward." As they prepared to leave HFY and continue their journey, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of purpose he had never known before. He wasn't just the owner of a space station anymore. He was part of something that could change the galaxy. And with the princesses by his side, he knew they were just getting started. The journey to unite the galaxy was not an easy one. As Marcus stood in the command room of the space station, looking out at the stars, he couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. The meeting with HFY had been a victory, but it was only one small piece of a much larger puzzle. There were still countless systems to reach, countless factions to convince, and far more challenges to overcome. After the success with HFY, the princesses had been encouraged. They now had their first ally, and their empire was beginning to take shape once more. But Marcus knew that their journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast, and not every system would be as open to their message as HFY had been. There would be resistance, distrust, and even outright hostility. Their next destination was a system known as Vera 7, a world that had long been a stronghold for those who opposed the princesses' empire. The leaders of Vera 7 had once been loyal to the princesses, but had broken off after the empire's fall. They were wary of anyone who claimed to be a part of the old order, and Marcus knew that this meeting would be different. It wouldn't be as simple as offering hope and building a partnership. This time, they would have to prove themselves. As the station approached Vera 7, Marcus felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had spent the past few days preparing for this moment, studying Vera 7 politics and history. He knew that the leaders of Vera 7 had their own reasons for turning away from the princess's empire. The galaxy had changed since their reign, and many species had moved on. But Marcus also knew that there was still a chance. If they could show the leaders of Vera 7 that their empire wasn't about control or domination, but about unity, there was a possibility they could succeed. The princesses gathered in the station's briefing room, and Marcus stood at the head of the table, ready to begin the discussion. He could feel the tension in the air. The princesses were ready to offer everything they had: resources, technology, and protection. But Marcus understood that it wasn't about what they could offer. It was about rebuilding trust. The leaders of Vera 7 arrived in a sleek, heavily armored ship, docking with the station in a display of power. Marcus had seen enough space battles and political maneuvering to know that this was a signal. Vera 7 wasn't going to give in easily. The leaders disembarked, and Marcus and the princesses met them at the airlock. The leader of Vera 7, a tall and stern alien with dark green skin and sharp, angular features, stepped forward. He did not smile or offer any pleasantries. His eyes narrowed as he scanned Marcus and the princesses. "I did not come here for empty promises," he said, his voice low and firm. "I came to see if your words hold any weight." Marcus stepped forward, meeting the leader's gaze with determination. "I understand your distrust, but what I can offer you is not just words. I can offer you a chance to rebuild something that can last, a galaxy united not under one ruler but through cooperation. That is what the princesses stand for." The leader of Vera 7 tilted his head, considering Marcus's words. "You expect me to believe that, after everything that happened, after the fall of the Empire, you think I should just forget the past?" "I'm not asking you to forget," Marcus replied. "I'm asking you to look at what's ahead. The galaxy has changed, and it's still changing. We're not asking for power over you, we're asking for partnership. A future where we stand together, not as enemies, but as allies. That's what we're offering." The room fell silent for a moment as the Vera 7 leader considered Marcus's words. It was clear he was skeptical, but Marcus could see a flicker of doubt in his eyes. That was all he needed. He didn't have to convince this leader immediately. He just needed to plant the seed of possibility. "I came here because I believe in possibilities," the leader of Vera 7 finally said, his voice still cold but less hostile. "But I need proof. Show me what you can do. Show me that your empire is not just a dream. Show me that you can deliver on your promises." Marcus nodded. "We can do that." The princesses had already prepared for this moment. They had brought data on the station's resources, trade routes, and technologies. They offered it all, no secrets, no hidden agendas. The princesses had nothing to hide, and Marcus could see that the Vera 7 leader was beginning to warm to the idea. They weren't asking for unconditional loyalty. They were offering a chance for something better, something real. After hours of discussion, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. It wasn't an immediate alliance, but it was a step forward. The Vera 7 leader agreed to a trial partnership, much like HFY had done. He would send a delegation to the station to assess the princesses' plans and see if they were truly committed to peace and unity. If they were, then perhaps they could work together. If not, then the partnership would end before it even began. Marcus left the meeting feeling a sense of relief. It wasn't a full victory, but it was a start. He knew that every step they took, no matter how small, was a step closer to their goal. It was one more system, one more faction, one more piece of the puzzle. As the days passed, Marcus and the princesses continued their work. They sent more messages, reached out to more systems, and slowly but surely they began to gain more support. But the work was far from over. Every time they thought they had made progress, new challenges arose. There were still factions that refused to listen, systems that remained neutral, and enemies who plotted in the shadows. But Marcus wasn't discouraged. He had seen firsthand the power of hope and belief. The princesses had shown him that, and he knew that with each system they united, their vision for a better galaxy was becoming more of a reality. And then, one day, they received a message from an unexpected source. It was a system known as Tharn 9, a place Marcus had never heard of before. The message was short, but it was clear. They wanted to meet. The Tharn 9 system had been isolated for years, avoiding all galactic politics. They had never been part of any empire, and they had kept to themselves. For them to reach out now, after everything that had happened, was a sign that something had changed. Marcus could hardly believe it. Another opportunity. Another chance to bring someone into the fold. He stood in the command room, staring at the holographic message, a smile slowly spreading across his face. He wasn't sure what the future held, but in that moment he felt a glimmer of hope. They were making progress. They were changing things. The galaxy was still broken, but it didn't have to stay that way. And with each system they brought on board, Marcus knew they were one step closer to uniting the stars. The months that followed were a blur of negotiations, messages, and meetings. Marcus had learned that rebuilding an empire wasn't a quick process. Every step forward was met with resistance, doubts, and new challenges. But as the princesses had told him, progress wasn't always about the speed of change. It was about steady, consistent growth. The success with Tharn 9 was an unexpected victory, one that breathed new life into their mission. The Tharn 9 system was small, isolated, and had remained neutral for years, yet they were willing to give the princesses' empire a chance. It was a sign that things were shifting, that the galaxy was beginning to take notice. People were starting to believe again. Marcus spent his days balancing between the endless discussions with new allies and the constant pressure from those who still didn't trust the princesses. He had learned to juggle the delicate art of diplomacy, but it was exhausting. There were moments when he doubted whether they could truly unite the galaxy, but every time that happened, he reminded himself of the bigger picture. The princesses were a constant presence, guiding him with their wisdom and patience. They were patient, but not passive. They knew the galaxy needed time to heal, and that the alliances they were building would take years to fully establish. It was a long game, one where every decision had consequences, and Marcus knew that he couldn't afford to make mistakes. One afternoon, as Marcus sat in the command room going over some reports, the station's communications officer called him. There was an incoming transmission from a system called Lysar 3. It was an unexpected message. The system had been a rival to the princesses' empire years ago and had since been one of the hardest to reach. Marcus had never expected them to make contact, especially not after everything that had happened. He hurried to the communications room where the holographic screen flickered to life. The face of Lysar 3 leader appeared. She was a tall, imposing figure, her eyes sharp and calculating. Marcus had heard stories of her. She was known for being both a fierce negotiator and a ruthless ruler. Her reputation was built on power and cunning, and she had no interest in the past. "Marcus," she said, her voice cool and controlled, "I have been watching your progress. I have seen the alliances you are building, and I have seen how the galaxy is reacting. The princess's empire is not what it once was, but it seems you are making something of it." Marcus took a deep breath, knowing this conversation could determine whether they gained another ally or lost everything. "Lysar 3 support would mean a lot to us," he said, trying to sound confident. "We're not asking for your loyalty. We're offering you a partnership, a chance to be part of something bigger. Together, we can create a galaxy where power is shared, not hoarded." The leader's eyes narrowed. "You're offering unity, but what are you really offering? A chance to join your old empire? To live under your rule once again? I've seen what your empire did to my people before, and I won't be fooled by your words. You may think you can build something new, but the old ways never die. I don't believe your intentions are as pure as you claim." Marcus felt the weight of her words, but he didn't back down. "I understand your distrust. I know the past cannot be erased. But we are not trying to recreate the empire that fell. We're building something new, something that includes everyone, no matter their race or history. The galaxy doesn't need one ruler, it needs cooperation. The kind of cooperation that comes from mutual respect, not control. The Lysar 3 leader was silent for a moment, as if weighing his words. "You speak of respect," she said finally, "but respect is earned, not given." "Your offer sounds good, Marcus, but it's still just an offer. What proof do you have that this new alliance will not be another version of the old empire? What will you do to ensure we are not simply being swallowed up by the same power you claim to oppose?" Marcus knew the conversation wasn't going to be easy, but he had learned that honesty was his best weapon. "I can't promise that it will be easy. There will be challenges, there will be setbacks, but we can build something different. We're starting small, but we're starting with the right intentions, and we want you to be a part of that, not as a subject, but as a partner." The leader of Lysar 3 studied him carefully. "You're an idealist, Marcus, I can see that. But ideals don't build empires, they build dreams. The galaxy isn't a dream, it's a battlefield." Marcus nodded. "I know, but I believe we can do more than just fight. We can build something better. The galaxy is at a crossroads, and this is our chance to choose a different path. We don't have to repeat the mistakes of the past." The leader's expression softened just a little, but her eyes remained guarded. "I will not join your cause easily, Marcus, but I will not dismiss it outright either. We will send a delegation to meet with you. Perhaps there is something to your words after all." The transmission ended, and Marcus exhaled, feeling the tension leave his body. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a rejection either. Lysar 3 was not an easy ally to gain, but this was a step in the right direction. As he walked back to the command room, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. Every step, every conversation, every new ally, it all mattered. They weren't just building an empire, they were building trust. They were rebuilding a galaxy that had been fractured for too long. A few days later, the delegation from Lysar 3 arrived at the station. The meeting was tense, as expected. The leader's representatives were skeptical, probing for weaknesses in Marcus's words. But Marcus remained calm, presenting their vision for the future. He wasn't asking for blind loyalty, he was asking for partnership. And by the end of the meeting, Lysar 3 agreed to join the alliance, albeit on a trial basis. It wasn't a grand victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. One more step forward. As the days turned into weeks, the alliance began to grow. New systems pledged their support, and the princess's empire slowly began to take shape once again. Marcus had become something more than just a liaison. He had become a leader in his own right, someone who could inspire others to believe in the future they were trying to create. And while there were still many challenges ahead, Marcus knew that they were on the right path. They weren't rebuilding the empire of the past, they were creating something entirely new. It wasn't about power, it was about unity, cooperation, and a shared vision for a better future. In the end, that was all they needed. The galaxy was vast, and their journey was far from over, but Marcus knew one thing for certain. They were no longer just dreaming. They were building something real.